All right, so for today's video lesson, we're going to continue with operations with mixed numbers. Today, we're going to be doing subtraction with mixed numbers, okay? Now, when we're subtracting mixed numbers, it is pretty much the exact same process of adding mixed numbers, except for we're going to be subtracting, okay? So first thing we need to do is add, or in this case, because we're not adding, is subtract the whole numbers to subtract fractions and 3, we're going to combine answer. Okay, so those are the 3 steps for operations with mixed numbers. Instead of subtracting, if the question's asking to add, of course you'll add the whole numbers and then add the fractions, okay? So this first example here, we have 2 3/4. So 2 wholes and 3/4. So I'm just gonna go ahead and color in my holes. So 1 whole, 2 holes, and 3/4. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So if we have 2 wholes and 3/4 and we're subtracting 1 whole and 1/4, so we're subtracting 1 whole and 1/4. Okay, so these will go away, 1 minus 1, and then this portion and this portion will cancel. So then we will be left with 1 whole and 2/4, which is equal to 1 and 1/2. Okay, we can solve this using diagrams, and we can also solve them just using our math. So let's go ahead and use our math here. Okay, so our operation was 2 3/4. Subtract 1 and 1/4. So step 1, if we'll subtract our whole numbers, so 2 minus 1 is equal to 1. And now we need to subtract our fractions. So 3/4, subtract 1/4. Because we have common denominators, we can just go ahead and subtract the numerators. This is not a fully reduced fraction. So I'll divide that by 2. Okay, so that second step is subtracting the fractions, and now we need to combine our answers. So we had 1 whole and 1/2, so 1 whole and 1/2. Final answer. Okay, so like we've been doing, there are a couple strategies that we can use to solve these types of problems. Okay, but if we follow those 3 steps that we already talked about, subtracting the whole numbers, subtracting the fractions, and then combining the answer, we should be good to go. Okay, so let's continue. So we have 2 3/4 again. So 1 whole and 2 wholes and 3/4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 3/4 of 12 will be 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? If I just multiplied the 3/4 fraction by 3, we will get 9/12. Okay, so this is 2 3/4. Now if we're subtracting 1 whole, so we're going to subtract this. And then we're also going to subtract 1/3. Now for that we need to get a common denominator of 12. So I'll multiply the numerator and the denominator by 4. So then that will be 4 out of 12. 1 out of 3 is an equivalent fraction to 4 over 12. So now I will subtract 4 from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we will just count what's left. So we have 1 whole and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 twelfths. Okay, so diagrams can be helpful. Let's try this using our math strategy. Okay, so we have 2 3/4, subtract 1 1/3. So step 1 is subtract the whole numbers. So 2 minus 1 is equal to 1. Step 2 is subtract the fractions. So 3 over 4, subtract 1 over 3. Hopefully you're saying, Mr. Jones, we don't have a common denominator. And you're absolutely right. So let's find it. I'm going to do the multiplication strategy here where I multiply 3 over 4 by the denominator we're trying to operate by. So it'll be 3 times 3 over 4, subtract 1 over 3, multiply by the denominator that I'm trying to operate by, so multiply by 4. So 3 times 3 is equal to 9, 3 times 4 is equal to 12, subtract 4 times 1 is equal to 4, and 4 times 3 is equal to 12. Now that we have a common denominator, we can just subtract the numerators. So 9 minus 4 is equal to 5 over 12. Now for step 3, we need to combine our answers. So if we had 1 whole and 5 twelfths, 1 whole and 5 twelfths will be our answer. Okay, so very similar to adding mixed numbers, but we're just subtracting this time, okay? All right, so this example here, we have 3 3/8 subtracting 1 1/2. So let's start by subtracting our whole numbers. So we have 3 subtract 1 is equal to 2, easy enough. Now we will subtract our fractions. So we have 3 over 8, subtract 1 over 2. I recognize that 8 is a multiple of 2. And so I'm going to leave the 3 over 8 fraction alone. And then I need to ask myself, how am I going to get the 1 over 2 fraction to have a denominator of 8? Well, I will multiply that by 4. So 3 over 8 stays the same. Subtract 1 over 2 times 4. So 1 times 4 is equal to 4. And 2 times 4 is equal to 8. Uh-oh. What are we going to do here? We have 3 and we're subtracting 4 eighths. Does that mean we get negative 1 over 8? Well, it would, but we don't want to get a negative fraction. So for this question, we're actually going to need to change our mixed numbers into improper fractions. So sometimes we need to convert mixed numbers into improper fractions. To be able to subtract. So we're kind of stuck if we do it this way. So I'm going to show you a different method for subtracting fractions, subtracting mixed numbers, so that it will always work out for us, okay? So we had 3 3/8. Subtract 1 1/2, right? Yeah. So if I wanted to convert these into improper fractions, remember improper fraction, the numerator is larger than the denominator. Okay, so if I wanted to do that, if we have 3 wholes here, that means we have 3 groups of 8 plus what is ever on top of the numerator. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to multiply the whole number by the denominator. Then add the numerator. So this is when we're going from a mixed number to an improper fraction. Okay, so for this fraction here, for 3 3/8, so I'll multiply the whole number by the denominator. So 3 times 8 is equal to 24, plus the numerator, which is 3, which will give us a number of 27 over 8. Okay, so 3 3/8 written as an improper fraction is 27 over 8. Okay. So remember, we're subtracting 1 1/2 from 3 3/8. So 3 3/8 converted to an improper fraction is 27 over 8. Let's do the same for 1 1/2. So 1 1/2. So remember, you're going to multiply the whole number, so 1, by the denominator, and then add the numerator. Okay, so 1 times 2 is equal to 2, plus the numerator, which is 1, so is equal to 3 over 2. And then the denominator is going to stay the same. So 1 1/2 is equal to 3 over 2 as an improper fraction. Okay, so now that they're both in improper fractions, we can start trying to subtract them. So 27 over 8, subtract 3 over 2. Okay, hopefully you recognize that we don't have a common denominator. That's okay, because we can find one. So 3 over 2, how do I get the denominator of 2 to get to 8? Well, I will multiply that by 4. And I'm going to leave the 27 over 8 fraction alone. So 3 over 2 times 4, so I'll multiply the numerator, so 3 times 4 is equal to 12. 2 times 4 is equal to 8. Now we have a common denominator. Now we can just subtract the numerators. So 27 minus 12 is equal to 15 over 8. Okay, now we can put our mixed numbers in improper fractions to allow us to subtract fractions when we run into problems sometimes, okay? But we never want to give our answer in an improper fraction. So let's fix this. So at this point, we need to ask ourselves, how many times does 8 go into 15? So if I up count, I'll go 8, 16, 2 is too much. So 1 whole time. Now, if I'm putting 1 whole into it, is the same as subtracting 8 from the numerator. So then if we subtract 8 from 15, we'll be left with 7 over 8. And that is our final answer. All right. So one more example here. Let's convert these to improper fractions right away so we don't run into that problem of having a larger fraction being subtracted from a smaller fraction, okay? So to change 4 1/4 into a improper fraction, I'll multiply the whole number by the denominator. So 4 times 4 is equal to 16 plus the numerator, and then over that fraction of 4. Okay, now we can do the same thing for the second one. So 3 2/5. So I'll multiply the whole number by the denominator. So 3 times 5 is equal to 15 plus the numerator, so 2, is equal to 17 over 5. And we're just going to leave that denominator the same. Okay? Now that we have improper fractions, we can try to subtract them. Okay, we do not have a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply the 17 over 4 fraction by the denominator of the fraction we're trying to operate on. So 17 over 5. So I'll multiply 17 over 4 by 5. And then to get 17 over 5 to have a common denominator as 17 over 4, I'm going to multiply 17 over 5 by the denominator of the fraction I'm trying to operate by. So 17 over 5 multiplied by 4. Okay, so now we will multiply the numerator and the denominator by the denominator of the fraction we're trying to operate with. So 17 over 4, the numerator and the denominator will be multiplied by 5. So 17 times 5 is equal to 85. And 4 times 5 is equal to 20. Subtract 17 times 4 is equal to 68. Divided by 5 multiplied by 4 is equal to 20. Now that we have a common denominator, we can just subtract our numerators. So 85 subtract 68 is equal to 17, and we will leave our denominators alone. And that is our final answer. All right, so I hope this was a helpful video for you. If you have any questions or need me to explain anything again, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to. All right, thank you and have a lovely day.